Right, there we go. I think
How's
we're
that?
live. We're having a technical start to this. Oh, all
Just a
good
little.
fun, mate. All good fun. And you made it in time.
It's not too bad, actually. I
Right.
thought it'd be
Reincarnation.
quality would be a bit worse, but it's all right, actually, isn't it? Yeah.
It's okay. You're stuttering a little bit, but it doesn't matter. I don't care at this point. In a previous life, we did this much more professionally. This time, it's a complete shit show. But reincarnation, ladies and gentlemen, and like I say, welcome Dave, welcome Damien, who is having to be on his phone this week because he's forgot his headset. Nightmare. So, reincarnation. Very, very quick, brief intro. So obviously, I think we all know what reincarnation is. Sometimes given different names that I haven't written down. Transmorphication or something. Anyway, 33% of Americans say they believe in reincarnation, but they believe in anything. And 29% of Christians say they believe in reincarnation as well, which is odd because it's not in their faith. Even modern surveys and things have done that reckon about a quarter of people believe in reincarnation or believe it might be possible. And that's in the West as well. In India and places like that, when we talk about religions a bit later, it's much, much higher. So, yeah, basically, reincarnation. It exists in almost every religion around the world except Christianity and Islam. The two big boys have gone, nah, screw that. Everybody else believes in reincarnation in some form or another. So, first of all, we'll talk about a few examples we've got, shall we?
Yeah.
Who would like to start? Oh.
Yeah, I can start with one. I've got an interesting
go for it.
Case from our own shores, actually. It's quite. I picked the case just because there's a BBC documentary where they did some some in-depth analysis, and the boy even travelled to the supposed location of his past life. The documentary is called "The Boy Who Lived Before." It was released in September 2006. The young lad in question's a kid called Cameron Macaulay, who in 2006 was 5 years old, so he would have been born in 2001. He was born to his mum, Norma Macaulay, in Glasgow, Scotland, and had a brother, Martin, who was a year older at 6. Now, this kid supposedly claims that he is the reincarnation of a gentleman called Shane Robertson. He used to live on a remote Scottish island in Barra, northwest of the Hebrides, so out in the Atlantic. But pretty much, I think it's one of the furthest points out, isn't it, of the Scottish islands, with a very small population of about 1,000 people. He at an early age, as most of our case studies will probably go into. So pretty much when you first start talking at 2-3 years old, he used to talk about his past life on Barra, and obviously sort of longed to return to that life back on this island. Now, it's very strange because his mum obviously found this very, very interesting that he was so specific, and his story kept very consistent for quite a long time, never changing. So they got a psychiatrist involved who analysed him to sort of see if it was perhaps imaginary imaginary people that children sometimes do come up with, but due to the fact that the outcome was death basically of the person, the children normally control the outcome apparently. With their own imaginary children, so they wouldn't select probably such a morbid situation within their own control, especially when they've not been sort of not subjected to, but not seen death, really much in their life before, not come across it, etc. He's also investigated by Skeptic magazine at the same time in the documentary. And they didn't really have any answers to be honest, after investigating it with the stories that he was telling being so specific. So his mum decided that the best thing to do was, as he was getting depressed and sort of longing for his previous family from this past life, was to fly to Barra and see, you know, if he recognised what he recognised, see if they could
In
find
the
a
Outer
house
Hebrides.
well, from northwest, it's like northwest out. It's literally probably the last bit of
Crap
land
holiday.
before the
Hooping
middle
man.
of the. Well, I guess when you're probably prone to bad weather there. Yeah. Isn't most of
Why
Scotland?
couldn't he have been like Bermuda?
Well, yeah.
The Canaries or something. I got a past life in the Canaries. Man.
Yeah, I think
Oh,
if you were
shit.
going to pick somewhere, you probably wouldn't pick there, would you? Of all places. So anyway, they went to the island, visited it, and prior to going to the island, I forgot to mention that he always used to talk about how he used to watch the planes landing on the beach from his house, the small planes. Anyway, so they ended up getting a small plane over to this island because it's such a small island. It doesn't really have a huge passenger requirement for airplanes, so they're quite small planes flying in, and lo and behold, they landed on a beach. So it's kind of mad, isn't it, when it's a remote island that he shouldn't know anything about. He's got no family members that are linked to that island. No one's ever known to his mum, talked about anything from Barrow or recounted any stories. There's no link, yet he recognises, first of all, that, you know, the landing strip on a beach on a small island, which is pretty specific at that age. But anyway, I'll finish off the story anyway. So they went to the island and tried to find, you know, the house, but were unsuccessful on their first day. They also went to the Heritage Centre on the island to see if they could trace the name Shane Robertson that he was obviously so specific with, and they came up blank on the first day. But the Heritage Centre phoned them back the next day and said that they had located the Robertson family that did live on the island in a house on the north end, I think, which is the area where the planes land on the beach as well. So it would make sense that you would see that from his house. So they go and visit the house. Upon the visit, sort of the normal, like, he's quite a bubbly, sort of energetic child. He just goes really sort of somber and depressed and silent as he's sort of going around looking at the house, and spots things he recognises, like the gate and the fireplace that haven't changed over the years, names which bedroom he stayed in, sisters, parents. So, you know, things that you'd expect a child to recognise if it was somewhere he'd been before. The only sort of caveat to that is they did then go on to locate a living relative called Gillian Robertson of the Robertson family. And she said that there was no Shane Robertson in the family that she knows of in the family, which, considering she should be related to who his past life previously was before he was killed. I didn't mention he was killed in a car accident. He always made the comment of my Barra daddy didn't look left or right. And that was how he lost his life. And also there was no known death in the family from that living relative, from Gillian Robertson, as described by Cameron. However, she does say that their uncle does fit the sort of description of the spiky hair and always wearing shirts, and his middle name was Seamus. And was often and was perhaps referred to by his middle name.
So you held that one back. You did it on purpose.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. That's exactly the story, isn't it?
A little bit of a zinger at the end there. We do like a good caveat though, don't we? I just like that word as well. To be fair, we do like a good caveat.
Yeah, I do like that word.
Yeah, good caveat.
I'm holding off saying the C word. I'll use it later. Can't all say it. Can't all throw all that. Can't all shoot hello this early.
Demonetize it if you use the C word, mate, I imagine.
Getting banned. Did I ever tell you my lad had a gaming YouTube channel, but he was putting out for kids, and they got like a couple of thousand subscribers, was making a little bit of money every month. He dropped the C bomb, it got banned. Got the whole channel banned. Anyway,
yep.
It was made me laugh, idiot. How about you, Dave? Have you got a story you want to share with us? Is it going to have an interesting caveat? Shot my load.
No. He's used up all the caveats. I think we don't want to throw it about too much. Just add something about the Cameron McCauley thing, though. Is that he said that he ended up in his mum's tummy after he fell through a hole. Was one of the things he said. he ended up in his mum's tummy after he fell through a hole, which I found quite strange. And mine would be about a gentleman called Parmod Sharma. Again, pronunciation might not be completely bang on, but he was born in. See, you know only too well. He was born in India in 1944, and when he was 2 years old, he told his mum in Moradabad that he had a wife in Moradabad that could cook for him, so that she didn't have to. So at the age of 2, he's turning around to his mum and saying, "My wife in Moradabad can cook for me, so you don't have to do that, Ma. You take a puke, darling." Now this Moradabad was 145 kilometres away from where his birthplace was in Basali, and around about when he was 3 or 4ish, he described like going out on a business venture and meeting these guys which were setting up this business venture, which were the Mohan brothers, where he'd worked with various family members and they would sell cookies and water. And he described building miniature shops and serve family with mud cookies and water, like I said before, and that he had been a really well-off tradesman, quite well-to-do businessman and such. But he would he complained about being like well off financially, but being in a less financially viable position now in his current family, and he would say his current family, so he was aware or allegedly aware of being in 2 completely separate families. And he sort of like told his parents or advised his parents against eating curd. Curd, for all you people out there that might try. So he warned them against curd, and he wouldn't go anywhere near it. He didn't like this curd. He wouldn't touch it himself, because he described them becoming very ill after eating curd, stomach cramps and feeling nauseous and vomiting and that kind of thing. So he didn't want them touching it, because it made him very sick in his old life. He would refer to it as his old life, and like I said, he was well aware of there being 2 families: his family now and his family then, his life now and his old life. And he hated being put into a bath. He didn't like being submerged in water, because he said that he died in a bathtub. So that he had died in a bathtub, he had drowned, and this traumatized him. He'd become quite, emotional about it, speaking about it, which is understandable, of course. So he's now parents, his parents promised that they would take him there, and we'll see that that's a reoccurring theme, and it makes a lot of sense that the parents of these children of these people, or the people, will go to the places they claim to have had a past life. They will maybe touch on that later, I don't know. Once he had learned to read, so the proviso was, once you've learned how to read, I think it's more establish yourself with the basis of foundation of education, and then we'll worry about chasing up the past life. Now it turned out that there was a family by the name that he claimed, which is Mera, I believe it is, and they had run a cookie making and a soda company that were called the Mohan Brothers. So this Mohan Brothers enterprise or venture did actually exist. And the manager of which was called Parmanand Mehra had died in 1943 after gorging, filling himself full of this curd, and having a load of stomach cramps, a gastrointestinal illness, and I think peritonitis. I think it might have been peritonitis. I don't suppose it. I don't know.
I think it was a couple of things. I think appendicitis was one of the things he developed, wasn't it? From it,
right?
As well as, was it like something like IBS? I assume as well, probably. But worse. But I know it was appendicitis.
Well, he passed away from it, and he tried all sorts of medicinal baths to try and help cure it. And he'd been the gastrointestinal disturbances that he was having. And excuse me, he'd been given a bath very shortly before he died. So, complaining about not being well, which the young Parmod Sharma did. The business venture, which Parmod Sharma spoke about, existed, and the bath thing, all very true. Like I said, so the guy who run the venture, the Parmanand Mehra, died in 1943, and Parmad Sharma was born in 1944. So there's one for you. Interesting.
There seems to be very rare. Well, no, it seems to be almost never in the cases that seem to be these real ones of perhaps reincarnation. The dates are wrong. Death is always before the birth. You never see them overlap, do you? Which does give also some credence to the reincarnation claims.
They say, and the different faiths as well. They do argue, don't they, that sometimes the reincarnation is immediate, but sometimes there can be a gap of months or even a little longer. But okay. First one I found was mainly because I liked the guy's name that he was supposed to be reincarnated to, and that always tickles my fancy. But it was a lad called Ryan Hammonds, and when he was 4 years old, he apparently become obsessed with like Hollywood and the Hollywood, the golden age of Hollywood. And he kept talking about how he thought he was an agent, and he kept talking about how he was obsessed with like this agents in Hollywood. And being 4 years old, that's quite an odd thing to become obsessed about. But apparently he would get picture books from old Hollywood thing. He would talk about actors, and he seemed to talk about them as if he like almost knew them. His mom actually started to get quite concerned about the little fella. So she actually took him to a psychiatrist. Ryan kept talking about him and his friend George, and nobody could identify who this George was. So his mom started to research and started to get really obsessed about this herself. And she was flicking through books of old photos from Hollywood, and Ryan stopped her and went, "That's me, and my mate, and George." So she sort of had to do a bit more research and find out the names, and eventually she found out that this was actually a photo of a chap called George Raft, who was an actor, and Martin, who was an agent and also a serial killer, because you cannot have two first names and not be a serial killer. I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, at the very least, you're a sociopath.
Yeah, 100%. The interesting thing I found about this was, as soon as sort of he started seeing the psychiatrist and Ryan started talking about this regularly, they sort of. You're distracting the hell out of me, Damien.
I'm sorry, I was just trying to adjust the phone.
I know, don't worry. But as soon as sort of they started talking about the family and what happened to, they sort of found out what happened to George. They found out what happened to Martin's wife and things like this. And as soon as Ryan sort of started to learn about these things, he stopped talking about it, and he seemed to lose that obsession. He even stopped sort of things that he seemed to know before. He seemed to sort of forget about. The psychiatrist that was speaking to him believed that basically as he resolved those past issues, that past things that his soul or whatever it was concerned about, as those sort of become resolved, it stopped being important to him anymore. It's almost like it allowed him to move on. And we're going to talk about what people think about what reincarnation is and things, but this Maya Baba, is an Indian philosopher and researcher, and she talks about how she believes that reincarnation is connected to desire, and once we can sort of fulfill those desires, then actually reincarnation can stop. It's connected to karma, which we'll talk about in a bit. But when she talked about this case, she said basically his desire was, his soul sort of thing was wanting to know that his loved ones were safe, and once he knew his loved ones were safe, he could move on and live his own life, sort of thing. And I found that fascinating, that a 4-year-old was talking about these things, and then sort of as soon as it was sort of clear in his mind that everyone was okay or passed away by this point, he moved on. And I just like that.
And most people tend to lose these early memories, don't they? They only have this access to these memories in sort of quite often in these cases, really early childhood, like from pretty much the point where they start being able to speak until they're maybe 6, 7, and then it seems to fade, which is almost like it's either too distant or it's that desire being fulfilled, perhaps, like you're saying, in a sense. Yeah.
There's a bit of a mystery with biology in the brain, actually, that they call it like the 5-year-old amnesia, that we actually forget almost everything that before we sort of turn 5 years old. And nobody can understand why, because we form memories perfectly well, but we don't seem to retain them. And that seems to be everybody. Nobody really remembers anything from about 5 backwards. I wonder if that might be something that's actually like related, that it's a thing. But anyway, it's
Possibly,
just
yeah.
a connecting. I may be making connections in my brain that aren't there. But
Yeah,
but
my
anyway,
earliest memory is sister being born at 4.5. That's pretty much the earliest thing I can remember. But that's probably, I think, also on that point, significant like good events or significant bad events in perhaps people's past lives. If you imagine like a bell curve of distribution of life experience, and most people's life experience is in the center of that bell curve. It's only on the extremes, on the bottom bits of the bell curve, where there's a few people that have really bad experiences, like being murdered or etc., or really good life experiences. And I think that perhaps those extremes of the bell curve are the only sort of memories that almost can be retrieved from a past life because of how strong the emotion was from those memories. And most people in that normal bell curve distribution of life experience, they just can't access it.
Yeah, well, when we can't access our own, when they did diary studies years ago, that they realised that people only remember about 20% of the things they even write down, and it doesn't seem to matter whether they're upsetting at the time or not. They still don't remember. So people say that, oh, we remember things when it's shocking. And actually, when they did diary studies, they found no, they don't. But anyway, have you got any more stories, Damien?
Yeah, I've got another quite an interesting one. Next year I was going to talk about was
theory out the water there. Galaxy's just thrown my theory out the water there. He was 18 months old and he can remember when Kennedy was assassinated.
Yeah, that's why I made a gesture before, because I've got a memory of something that happened when I was about 16, 18 months old as well. That was very vivid.
Okay.
That I recounted when I was in my teens, which was, I'll be just sorry to interrupt you, Damien. Sorry.
No, go for it.
Am I okay to say it? Yeah.
It's relevant. Go.
Yeah.
I had a memory of seeing my mum crying on a doorstep, but the doorstep was still inside a room with stairs. And I remember she was crying because a bike had hit the wall and hit her in the back, and it was the child's metal trike with the pedals on the front wheel from when you were younger. Yeah. And I told her about this when I was, I don't know, maybe 14, 15, I think. And she said, yeah, the reason that was because we lived in a flat, and the entry hall had stairs that led to the upstairs flats, the upstairs apartments. And it was when he had an argument with somebody and they threw a child's bike. It really happened. It was yellow and red and it hit me in the back. And I remembered it completely. She was absolutely mortified by this and really freaked out by it. But, it's not me swearing on them isn't worth anything. I don't believe in anything. But, if there is a big G-Meister in the sky, this happened. And I can't explain why.
You could argue that's like in that small bit of the bad experience bell curve and why it's perhaps a memory that you remember past that point. And my one's 4.5, sister being born. That's probably on the other end of the bell curve, isn't it? Like joy, you've got a new sister. It's all new and
a traumatic event for me was when I was round about the same age, maybe a little bit younger, and I was being bathed with my sister, because it was okay back then. We were kids and it was the 70s, and I went under the water. My mum had turned her back to get some towels. I went under the water and started to drown, and ambulance came out. I had to be revived, and it led to years of me having convulsions, but I don't remember anything about that.
Okay.
I don't know.
Creepy weird.
Maybe memory is a lot stranger than we know yet.
We'll talk about memory a bit later, because the way memories are formed aren't the way people think. I think people think we've got this like recorder in our brain, and that's not how it works. But yeah, because we're going to talk about false memories a bit later when we start tearing this up and debunking it a little bit, I think. Damien, have you got any more stories for us?
Yep, I certainly have. I was going to go on next to the case of Dorothy Eady. Now, she's a very interesting lady. It was born in 1904. She suffered an injury at 3 years old, though. She fell down the stairs, a head injury, and ended up in hospital, I think unconscious for a sort of a period of time. Seemed to sort of miraculously recover, to the sort of surprise of the doctors with the extent of the head injury. And then when she had sort of recovered, she behaved very strangely for a 3-year-old girl, and very strangely compared to sort of how she behaved prior to the head injury. So her parents obviously took note of this and started talking to her more, questioning her more, and obviously got her to sort of talk to them. And she was recalling sort of her previous life in ancient Egypt, with sort of some astonishing sort of level of detail of sort of Egyptology that a 3-year-old that had never studied anything would just not know, in terms of the gods that they worshipped and praised, that kind of stuff in that specific period. And she even named the pharaoh that she served as Seti, specifically, which does date to a period of history in Egyptology and is a pharaoh that reigned. She left she studied, I suppose, Egyptology sort of heavily at school when she was 15 years old, and then ended up going to the British Museum and obviously seeing the exhibit there, and basically I think ended up sort of kissing the feet of some of the statues of the gods, and really crazy. And this obviously just flooded in more and more memories of a past life. She was sort of pretty much knew that could read hieroglyphics immediately. She said it took the very little limited time to sort of fully be able to read hieroglyphics. So she said to a teacher she wasn't learning it, she was just remembering what she once knew, and could read the hieroglyphics on the statues in the British Museum. She then subsequently met an Egyptian man that she got married to, and then emigrated out to live in Egypt. I think the story goes she kissed the ground when she arrived on home, when she finally did get there. And she's put her past life story to the test over the years with a lot of interesting location reveals of hidden tombs and artifacts contained within those hidden tombs that Egyptologists were unaware of through the course of her life. So she's one of the sort of, I suppose, most believable stories of reincarnation.
So that sounds like something I was reading about, sort of xenoglossy. And it's got a couple of other terms as well, where there's been cases where people have actually been able to read or speak foreign languages.
Yep.
There's only been like a handful of cases of this. Apparently, it's not particularly common. One of the main researchers we'll talk about in a bit, Ian Stevenson, actually found a few of these cases. And it does seem to happen sometimes. Yeah, it does seem to happen sometimes that people can understand or speak foreign languages. I mean, at that age as well, these are normally young children, young people. When those cases are verified, and some of these cases, like I say, with this Stevenson chap who used to verify things religiously, that's hard to explain. That's hard to explain other than that's not something they've overheard, is it? You wouldn't think. Ancient Egyptian for a start. Fascinating. How about you, Dave? You got another story?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
One thing I've got is plenty of stories regarding this. Maybe too many, but I have. Which one should I go to? I'm sort of torn between a couple here because there's one or two which actually date back, so I don't know if that's worth doing because that's an old one. I mean, they're all interesting. Obviously, that goes without saying. I think I remember somebody mentioning that particular name, so I think somebody else has got that now. But I'll go with Peter Hume. Peter Hume was a bingo caller from Birmingham in England for our
Birmingham.
For our
bingo.
For our colonial cousins, just so you know. And he started having these very, very lucid and specific dreams. I mean, I think that's an understatement. That's pretty much what they all have anyway, isn't it? But these are very lucid and specific dreams about life being on guard duty. This fella's now on guard duty at the Scottish border. And he's very specific about the year, which, But anyway, it's 1646. So he's on guard duty on the Scottish border in 1646. Reoccurring dream, keeps having it. Scottish border, 1646. Okay, and he claimed to be he claimed to be a Roundhead soldier, a foot soldier of Cromwell's army, and that his name was John Raphael. He was called John Raphael.
A very Scottish name, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah, Raphael, very, I seem
Yeah.
French of origin.
a very common
Italian?
mutant Ninja Turtle name.
Raphael. Yeah,
Oh,
it was, wasn't
Raphael.
it? Is that what I'm getting confused with? I think I am, actually. I'm thinking back
He
to the
liked
Teenage
his-
Mutant Ninja
He
Turtles.
liked, he liked his pizzas. Oh,
Was
he
he-
was he was put under hypnosis.
Italian painter, Raphael. I'm not sure. I'll give it.
You're just trying to be like really bohemian and clever now. But yeah, you're quite right. Now this dude was hypnotized, put under hypnosis. Excuse me, and he remembered more details and locations, as would be the case, or as you would expect to be the case. And as he got older, he started to visit these places that he remembered that he'd been with his brother, and then he found small items that had been collected throughout his family history, allegedly, that appeared to have come from the area. He would pick these up from around the towns as well. He would sort of focus in on particular little trinkets and stuff that were from the 1600s, from the time period he's claiming he was a foot soldier from. Like for like horse spurs and little ornaments and like a cup and things like this. And then he met a village historian in a place called Culmstock in South England. It's a bit ambiguous, but if you're from Culmstock, well done. But Culmstock in South England, he managed to positively identify details about a church as well. Apparently that he had known in his life in the 1600s. But he was even able to say that the church then had a tower. This church used to have a tower. The church now no longer has the tower. What else with it? Let me go to me too. I need a bit of a kick here. Yeah, okay.
There was an elm tree growing out of the spire, growing out of the top.
Yeah. And apparently this wasn't well known though about the tree. This allegedly wasn't. I mean, we know about it, so that's a lie straight away, isn't it? But I mean, it's how do we know about it? Well, back then apparently it wasn't a published fact. Yeah, good old Tinterweb. And this church tower had been removed in 1676. This is before you were born, America, but 1676. And he checked in all the local registers and stuff like that. John Raphael was found to have been married in that church, in this very church where the tower had been missing from. Yeah.
How common a name would that have been?
How John Raphael, easy for me to say, the pizza guzzling mutant Ninja Turtle, had been married in that very church. Now, a Civil War historian also looked into it. He's called Ronald Hutton, was a Civil War historian. He investigated the case and he asked Mr. Peter Hume very era-specific questions, which I always think is a very good idea when people are making these claims anyway, to take any kind of ambiguity out of it, obviously. But he couldn't answer all of the questions. In fact, a big chunk of them I think he couldn't answer in a satisfactory way. So he's sort of kind of cast aside. But as far as I'm aware of the ones that I've looked into, that goes back to one of the earlier times in the list. Do you know what I mean? I could say the mid 17th century. So that's Peter Hume. Bingo, Carl. He's good with his numbers.
Legs 11.
Yeah, I did watch the
Legs 11 with a Brummy accent.
There was a documentary, wasn't there, with him in where they went and tried to obviously corroborate the previous lives. And there was another good one as well. There was like 4 people that had these past life things, and then they went to Europe to try and corroborate their past lives. And sort of 2 of them they did manage to sort of do relatively well, but the other 2 it was very difficult. And I suppose the further you go back in time, the more difficult it is going to be to corroborate any of these previous lives, unless they make astounding claims that come into fruition. Like the lady I mentioned, that's why I thought she was so fascinating, because she was uncovering ancient tombs, Dorothy Eady, which, how did she know where they were? How did she give exact locations without any archaeological digs or just just the longer the time span, I think, the more fascinating if they can make those kind of claims or predictions that are right.
If you're going back hundreds of years as well, just having something written down. I mean, it just astounds me that they found that name. Because if he'd have said it was Jacques, bloody, I don't know, what's it called? O'Connor. On a Scottish border, O'Connor. I wouldn't have been, I'd have been like, yeah, okay. But saying like, that's balls in it. So unless they knew that already, unless they basically got a research and go, oh my God, there's a guy called Raphael up there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Unless it was a complete hoax sort of thing.
Yes, it's not a very common surname that would have appeared a lot in the local people or the local population in that time period. I imagine it was, you would have thought, quite limited.
Yeah.
I don't know history well enough to state that in the 1650s, to be honest. But
I think a big chunk of the questions he couldn't answer satisfactorily were more based around the Cromwell's New Model Army. You know what I mean? Claiming to be on guard duty at the border in Scotland as part of Cromwell's army.
Yeah.
And then when quizzed upon that, it's like, well, if you served in the military back then...
it would all be second nature, wouldn't it? All of the commands for, like, I don't know, the training from, like, what was it, pipe this, pipe that, or...
Yeah.
There would have been, like, it's still military back then. It was still sort of separate. They still knew how to train men, didn't they? And, get them fighting for a cause.
Well, before we go to another story, let's talk about that now for a second. Because, I mean, the question that jumps to mind is how much of the detail do you think we would carry on? Do you think it's perfectly believable that if we're assuming reincarnation is real, that somebody could have certain memories, but maybe not others? So we can remember bits, but...
How sketchy are some of your memories from some of this life?
Really bad, but I've taken a few hits to the head. So,
but some things I remember quite well. I suppose emotional events or things that you categorise with high importance, you tend to try and commit to memory more, don't you? Like, I suppose, scientific understanding of physics for me, I try and commit more of that to the memory because I'm interested. Or emotional things, because I think that emotion is probably a huge part, yeah.
I think, knowledge is different than life experience, though, isn't it? The knowledge you choose to retain or learned knowledge, if you like, in an academic sense, is different than actual life experience and what you actually go through, perhaps, maybe. I don't know, because, like using Milado there as an example, like, to fall down on some of the most... anybody who's served and anybody who's been into war will have memories they choose to ignore, not memories they can't remember. For the most part, unless there's been some kind of, a massive trauma, some kind of PTSD, some kind of brain or injury or something like that. But usually it's memories they choose to not want to bring to the surface. Not something they can't, just completely bizarre. And it does seem that in a lot of the cases, there's almost cherry-picked parts that are relevant and then complete nothing with the rest of it,
I could believe it though. I mean, if there's some sort of transference of the soul, I don't see why you would take all of your memories with you. Like Damien said earlier, that maybe certain things are sort of imprinted when they are shocking or something. Maybe that self of identity of who we are is important enough for that sort of imprints. But maybe like for day-to-day memories and stuff isn't carried with us.
You'd expect it to have a purpose to need to do that, though. Given, I agree with you, but what I'm saying is, you would expect it to need to have a purpose to do that, to be in a position where not only is it brought to the fore when a new life, or you come into a new life, but that once that part of it has been satisfied, you suddenly forget about it and get on with your new life. If that makes any sense, do you know what I'm saying? Like it's
you integrate into who you are now, and you move on.
And move on from it. Yeah,
it's like the whole thing. I suppose with the paranormal with ghosts, isn't it? It's let's say unfinished business, or what's the word? Desires that you haven't yet, quelled. Basically, like we were saying before, maybe it's linked to that as well.
Do you think sort of ghost hunting or the science of ghosts or whatever you want to call it, and sort of what we're talking about could be related?
I think there's a massive overlap given what people sort of refer to as being the stone tape theory, that moments of high stress or emotional output or trauma are imprinted upon the energy within the environment and played back as if it were a recording. If it's
I
the
do
same
like
as
that
being
theory.
certain elements that happen within a life are imprinted upon what would intrinsically be called the soul, I suppose you would say, that then journeys through time, is then reborn in physical form. And those memories are still imprinted upon that energy, just like they're imprinted upon the energy within an environment in stone tape theory, and then replayed within the memory or the conscious memory of the new person or the new being. So I could sort of see a link, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I see it as well.
It seems to me that if there's a mechanical, or some sort of something behind what is happening, some sort of the energy or the mechanics of how it works, it feels similar to me. That we're talking about energies that can transfer and things like this. And if there's a science behind it, I don't really want to use the word science to this. But if there's a science behind it, it seems to be similar. Anyway.
Well, you got to think that the cutting edge of physics at the moment is pretty much what are the percentages? Dark matter and dark energy that makes up 95% of the universe. Yeah, it's pure theory because we can't actually postulate any kind of experiment to test the hypothesis. So everything we know is like 5%, and we've termed that normal, but 95% supposedly is unknown. I think there's a lot we don't know yet, and just because science can't explain something today doesn't mean science won't explain it tomorrow. That is the process of scientific understanding, isn't it?
Yeah, it's crazy. The last story I had was a young lady from India in 1926. And the reason I really raised it was because it was actually quite heavily investigated at the time by quite famous people. So as a young lady, like I said, she didn't speak till she was like 4, like at all. And then as soon as she started speaking, she just started talking about her husband and her son, who lived about 100 miles away. So her teacher, Mathura, found out, and was really interested and found out more information about it. And they got a name of her husband, of Pandit Kandanath Chaub. So the teacher put it on herself and went and found him, sent letters, confirmed that actually Pandit was still alive, that at this point the daughter was, the girl was 8 by this time, and they confirmed that actually his wife had died 9 years previously. So literally there's like, the 9 months gap sort of thing. The reason I found it interesting though is Mahatma Gandhi took a personal interest in this. And investigated. They set up a committee of 15 people to investigate, and they could never debunk it. They tried to debunk her, and they never could. Her
husband from the previous life, didn't he, posed as the brother rather than her actual husband, and she immediately recognised the Roos and recognised their previous husband. So they
tried to test her in a few different ways, apparently. And she kept passing. It's like the reason I think I really want to mention with this, because in India and places like that, this is a very common belief in Sikhism, all the other sort of religions in that area. That this is a well held belief. It's it's as common as the Holy Trinity is for us or something. Do you think that's? I mean, a lot of people have, when they've done research on this, they've claimed that a lot of these cases are in these areas, and they're in the areas where it's more highly believed. But we've already mentioned 3 or 4 cases which were in the West or from America and things.
According to that gentleman you mentioned, Ian Stevenson, was it? Is it Ian? Yeah, it is Ian, isn't it? He did a lot of analysis of a lot of these cases, didn't he? And he said it's just as prevalent in countries that believe in reincarnation as to countries that don't. He said there's no, from the numbers in his cases, it doesn't matter whether you. I
was going to say this. Do you think it's just that we have more cases in places like that because they're more open to the possibility? So when
Yeah.
something weird like this happens, they're easier to jump to. Well, maybe it's reincarnation than we would. We might jump to mental health issues.
It's more not being afraid to talk about it. I think if society
Yeah.
accepts it as an idea, then you're free to discuss, aren't you? It's only when your society doesn't really accept it in their current view of the world, or then you feel sort of ostracised and sort of singled out if you go down that road, I guess.
Hmm.
Well, that's it, isn't it? I mean, it's more culturally and socially acceptable in certain countries than it is in others, because of because there's a difference between what some cultures consider to be reality and what other cultures consider to be spirituality, and the crossing over between the two. The matching between the two. Because to some, it's without wanting to arc on too much and jumping on theology too much. It is all a faith thing, isn't it? So to hear that it's not just the remit of areas where it's particularly higher religious belief system, and it just happens anywhere and everywhere. The demographics are right across the world. In a way, I find that kind of comforting, if you like. It sort of makes it a little bit more real rather than just a spirituality, faith, belief, religion type of thing, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it does. The one comment we had a little while ago from Galaxy Service. Some people believe that consciousness isn't the brain, but from an external source. Could these kids be accessing those memories from others who have lived? I just want to ask a question. What do we think then reincarnation is? Do you think that it is a soul jumping from body to body, like some? In Buddhism, sometimes it's not quite that. They talk about rebirth, and the energy is reborn each time, and it's not the same as reincarnating into a new flesh sack. It's slightly different. Or
a new avatar would probably be
yeah,
a new meat bag.
Yeah, exactly. New meat bag. Or do you think it could be sort of what Galaxy Surf is talking there, that it's actually just maybe tapping into the energy? So it's not maybe a new soul, but it's something that they've sort of got latched onto, or was like, or been. Do you know what I'm trying to say? I'm not explaining myself very well, but
I know exactly what you mean. I'm very much a believer. What was it? Erwin Schrödinger stated, didn't he, that there is one consciousness. We are all one.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that perhaps potentially when you die, your consciousness returns to the sort of the universal consciousness, and then it awaits reincarnation in that sort of universal life stream where you can traverse through the universe as like a light particle, basically observe what you want to observe, and then when it's ready for you to reincarnate in another body on another planet, the energy pops down into that being, so that you can exist within that avatar for that life, to experience something that gets you closer to a state of enlightenment, and no longer needing to reincarnate anymore.
Well, that's really firmly in the Buddhist or parts of the Buddhist camp. I didn't realise the Buddhists actually argue about these things. They don't seem like they argue in sort, but they've got lots of different ideas, the Buddhists. You'd think they just all agreed in. But
I did think they were the most peaceful of all of the world's religions, but I suppose what's going on in what was previously Myanmar, which is now what they changed the name to.
I can sort of play devil's advocate in that one. My sort of take on it would be, if that was the case, and these memories are readily available, if you like, as a universal kind of energy that is constantly surrounding us, why it's individuals have a singular memory of a set of events from the past that they then think that they lived, and not multiple people have that same memory, that should be accessible to everybody if it is part of the universal energy as a memory of one. If you understand where I'm coming from, it's an individual remembers being an individual. It's not a group of people ever remember being an individual, if that makes any sense. Even though all these memories and these past lives of people that have lived in the past should be readily accessible to anybody who's in a state, either a conscious, subconscious state, or whatever, to be able to access them or remember them. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah,
you're saying
that you'd have access to the universal consciousness, so you'd have access to many different past lives, Yeah, good point. And also, you've made me think. Well, right, why do people only remember one past life in particular? Why don't they remember the last 3, the last 5, the last 10?
Yeah, so even if you argue that not everybody can do it, and only a few people can do it, or in the right, the conditions are right for them to do it, why they only remember one past life and not multiple past lives of different energies and beings that have existed? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, great question. One of the best probably that we'll come up with, I imagine.
Yeah, why can't they access the whole database? Why are they just accessing one file sort of thing? I was just wondering if maybe sometimes the energy can get imprinted somehow onto the new. I don't know, like recording over a tape, or I don't know. And it's just an interesting point that I thought that could there be another explanation of reincarnation? That's we see that and we think we're making an assumption about the soul passing on, but maybe it's accessing information that's actually all around us somehow. I don't know.
Which is where we sort of sorry, Damien, go on, brother.
No, don't worry. It's fine. You go.
I was just going to say, which is why we sort of like have embellishment, because if you sort of like look at memory as being a tape recording, and then trying to constantly play it back, and you're using the same tape, which is your memory, if you like, and you're recording multiple different events, and over time, the further the recording goes back, the more you need to use the video tracking to bring it into focus. So therefore, things do sort of like get made up to help with enhancing longer term memory, which sort of leads itself to embellishment and imagination and so on and so forth, playing a part and just being able to bring it to the fore because it's so old. Because the original recording, as it were, use BASF if you possibly can. You'll be too young to remember, but if you the older back the memory, the more scattery it is because of that very reason. But they seem to be either on the money, as it were, or pretty scantish in it. It's a little bit scattery. I don't know. I'm just not totally. I don't know about this universal memory. I can believe in sort of like a universal energy, but I mean, that's sort of then suggesting that there's a linear passage of imprintable energy that's accessible from people that are further down the linear time. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. We've not getting any evidence, are we, of and why haven't there been 2 people that have both claimed to be the same person in a past life?
Yeah,
I think there have been, though, haven't there? That has happened.
Have there? Is there maybe famous people, but then they're more likely to be the claims that aren't necessarily legitimate. When it's just a claim that it was a random person in that town that's 100 miles away.
Bloke.
No one particularly famous or wealthy, or obviously the wealthier and famous they get, the bigger target they are, aren't they? Yeah.
Who wants to try and claim the kudos of being a rat catcher from medieval Britain who used to live on turnips? You know what I mean? So,
they just said actually the bulk of cases, when they looked at Ian Stevenson's cases, they said the bulk of the cases, particularly in India, seemed to be children wishing they were, higher class or wealthier, or there always seemed to be, none of them, the bulk anyway, seemed to be in a higher caste of class or something like that.
I suppose another way that I'm trying to put it is even when you have a library, more than one person takes out one book. It's not just like the one book is used only once. That's what I'm trying to say. Multiple people will take that same book and will access the memories within it or the writings within it. And it's sort of like if you see all these memories of people that have lived in the past as being like that, imprinted upon the energy of the universe, then I don't know. Anyway.
I'm with you.
Well, we've mentioned Ian Stevenson a couple of times now. So he was a psychiatrist, and he's written 12 books, and he's generally considered to be at the forefront of real research going on. He's researched over 2,500 cases. I love this guy because he was criticised for only really looking at Indian faiths and Indian stories, and all the stories that came from those areas where it's a higher belief anyway. So his next book was European cases of a reincarnation. I just want to see him on the front cover going, nah. Thing I really love about this guy, though, is he's had lots of critics over the years, but actually he's his biggest critic. So somebody will come out and go, this is anecdotal and it's cherry picked and it's all about false memories. And he's like going, if you actually read the forward in my book, you'll notice that I wrote that some of these are anecdotal evidence, and some of it is I have cherry picked in areas that have show the most evidence, or you're criticising me with something I've actually already criticised.
But surely that's you're aware of that when you read when you pick up something you're reading and it's a scientific hypothesis. There's obviously something they're trying to prove. So they obviously are going to be looking for that evidence. It's confirmation bias, isn't it? You're looking for evidence to prove your hypothesis, and I think all scientists are guilty of that to some extent. They must be by the very method.
It's a little bit more difficult for this one though, because most scientists, when they put forward a hypothesis, it's peer reviewed, isn't it? It's
and I suppose this is more case study, isn't it? And then you can't. Yeah, so it's not really hypothesizing like in a true science.
It's difficult.
Yeah,
it's difficult to have a controlled study group or a controlled study scenario like this.
Which is why he says it's anecdotal. He actually says that's a fair argument, because that's the kind of research it is. It's stories. People are telling me their stories. I've tried to confirm it best I can, but but he actually really goes above and beyond to confirm these things, to the point where Carl Sagan, who I did not think I'd be reading about today when I started reading about reincarnation, actually said that it's some of the most careful and empirical evidence he'd ever seen on the subject. He dismissed reincarnation. He doesn't believe reincarnation is the answer. But he did actually say, after looking at a lot of this research, primarily from Ian Stevenson, that it was definitely a subject worth investigating. He says there's something going on, but he doesn't know what it is. You get somebody like Carl Sagan saying your research is decent, and it's it's the closest thing to empirical evidence I've seen on this subject.
Yeah,
you must be doing something right, yeah.
Yeah, it's time to. Excuse me. That's an incentive to keep going, isn't it? That.
And Carl Sagan was known for he'd tell you what he thought. He didn't bullshit.
Oh yeah.
So.
Oh yeah.
Well, I do believe Carl Sagan was sort of used by perhaps the government to quell the interest in extraterrestrials, because apparently his personal beliefs were the opposite from what he presented on screen. Apparently,
that happens a lot, though, doesn't it? That happens a lot. People start out with the best of intentions and they'll quite happily sell out when it comes to getting the old greenbacks. That will happen. It does happen. I just want to do my comment. I've got to say that some of the comments that have been made in the side chat today have been absolutely fantastic regarding this particular topic. And everybody in the side chats, did we say something? Did we upset him in any way? We lost Damo.
His battery's died, probably. He'll be back in a sec.
But the side chat's been absolutely fantastic. There's been some excellent comments made.
Like Baz's comment now. How many gigabytes does the brain have of memory? We could talk about memory a little bit, because memory is interesting. One thing I wanted to make a comment though, I wanted to make about Ian Stevenson, I found was really interesting. He found a correlation between a lot of birthmarks. So we'd find birthmarks on people's bodies, and they seemed then to correlate to actual injuries from the person they were supposed to have been reincarnated from. So somebody would have a car accident, somebody would be injured and scarred, and they would find in terms of these birthmarks. But he didn't just sort of say this and use anecdotal evidence. He went back and got medical records and things, and actually presented the medical records, which again, you're starting to put in all this evidence over and over again. You've got to be pretty confident, because people are going to tear that apart. The more evidence you throw, the more ammunition you're given to have thrown back at you potentially. He really fascinating. Beyond
a shadow of a doubt, the more you try to present as being empirical proof of the very thing you try to put forward, the bigger rod you're making for your own back. If you're wrong, if you're wrong,
Yeah, exactly. So, where I was going to go with that, we was talking about the memory then, because we're going to have to talk about false memories, because that's where the big skeptics could say that this is just false memories. It's implanted, particularly when we start talking about regression hypnosis and things, which I actually Googled regression hypnosis today, and it came up regression hypnosis near you. So you can, there's a guy up in the town by me that does it, and I'm like, it's not the sort of thing we should just be doing. Like, I went to the best schools in Central America, probably, to learn these skills.
I was listed in the Karachi Medical Gazette.
Exactly. So no, you shouldn't do that. But memory doesn't quite work in the same way. I think people think like it's like you said, it's like a tape recorder. It's not really, is it? Because one of the things because I did a psychology degree, and one of the things when we were learning about memory was, for one, you learn memories in different parts of your brain, depending on where you get sort of calendar or time related memories, and you get like episode memories and episodic memories and things like this. But one of the things it says was, just say if you go on holiday in the same place when you're young. So I went to, my dad used to take us to Centre Parks in Wales. We went 5 or 6 times. So one of the things your brain does, instead of going, oh, we'll record that, and then we'll record the second time we go, and we'll record the third time we go, your brain just goes, we went 5 times, here's the memories of it, and we'll just tag a thing on it to say we went 5 times. Move on. When you sort of realise that brain, again, it's a way of just cutting corners. Your brain is brilliant at cutting corners and limiting how much information it can take in. So it's we could talk about perception and how perception works all night, and how we perceive information about the world around us. Could that be part of what we're going on though? People start saying about false memories. When we start realising the brain forms memories differently to how we think, how much of this could literally be just people dragging memories from something they learned at school, maybe about Henry VIII, and then tagging their own fantasies onto it, and then through regression hypnosis they can't tell the difference between the two?
Yeah, I think in cases where adults are having this regressive hypnosis to help remember past events of past lives, that can certainly be called into question. And obviously, you've got different types of things throughout that person's life which will imprint certain aspects of what they've experienced in their environment and in their social surroundings upon their psyche, like associative thinking and pattern matching and things like that, depending upon what type of parameters they're involved with. But when you're talking about when you're talking about young kids that are having these memories, and you're taking the regressive hypnosis out of it, then it becomes a completely different thing again, doesn't it? Because I would have to say exactly that, because the way that we access memories isn't as clear cut as a lot of people say, as you mentioned. And the ability to recall short-term memory over long-term memory is a very different process. You can have factual thinking and emotive thinking, and the way to access both of those memories are completely different than the other. Different parts of the body. Going into too much about psychology for people in the side chat is a completely different thing. Your amygdala can do a lot to you that you're not even aware of, especially when it comes to emotive thinking, and that's its primary function. But I think it's a massively valid point that. About that, and you using the tape wasn't the best kind of example I could have given, but just to put it out there to say that how easy it is for memories to become jaded, even if they are well imprinted upon our brain. I mean, forget the actual thing that they called it when you do that shortcut thinking. Like you say, I suppose that's a form of pattern matching in a way, like you say. Well, we went to Rill 10 times, and that's what I remember. But lots of different events might have happened on each of the journeys, but you just remember that you went to Rill, and you might have, they all become one thing. You're right. You might have ridden on a donkey on the 4th trip, in actuality, but you remember it being the 8th, and and you went to the park and you went to do this, and it all becomes one memory, even though they're spread over lots of different years. So I'm always a little bit leery about hypnosis anyway, and all that the regressive hypnotherapy is. I don't know.
Don't do it. I say don't do it unless there's a really good reason. I don't see anything. I've just gone through this, trying to think this through earlier, because why is it always historical? And if it's basically based on some sort of memory, and then mixing with fantasy or imagination, because they imply that one of these people, that it's always like wealthier kids that they with their reincarnated souls, which implies that there's some sort of like imagination involved. It's just that it's about their desire or something. Why is it then never? Why is it always in the past then? Why aren't they regressed and think that it's a future being or something? Or if it's imagination, that's not. But if it's coming from just inside them, why is it always like historical? Why isn't it Why don't they think they're, I don't know, alive now or alive in the future or alive something else? It's just that doesn't make any logical sense to me. Why is it always historical if it's just imagined?
Yeah, it's always retrospective, isn't it? If it's made up, and some of the things that they make up, or if they are making these things up, are very they hardly uber cool, are they? They hardly something. They're always very very traumatic. Yeah, that is a really good point. I mean, it's the little things within it that make it. It's the minutiae in it. It's the that make these kind of cases. The little things that might be not inherently noticeable firsthand. It's only when a lot of or a greater deal of research goes into it that they find specific elements like such a body did have such a book that they kept under their pillow, but nobody knew about it. But this young lad did, said, "Oh no, I don't need to take a Bible to bed because I always used to keep one under the pillow and or whatever." And it's little things like that. It doesn't tend to be really big, outlandish kind of statements. Hey, you!
Hello, I'm back.
How are you doing?
Phone died.
How's it going?
It's good we missed you.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't
We
realise.
missed you, darling.
Yes, I didn't realise the phone wasn't quite on charge.
In fact, since you dropped out, we've used the word caveat about a dozen times.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we caveated the crap out of that.
You beat me on the word count, and I think I managed
Throwing
to
it
use it
around
3
like-
times denying that one story.
Throwing it around like confetti, you know.
One of the things I did want to talk about was because Scientology always interests me, and it's the one group of people I've never annoyed. So because I've got more sense, because they sue a lot, so let's be nice about them. But they actually believe, and this is where I'm just going to. Right, so they believe that we're all from this Thetan, which is an immortal spirit being.
Mm-hmm.
And that we've fallen into a degraded state, and that's what all human souls are. So we have to be audited. I love the terminology. To free that person of trauma and to allow them to move towards an enlightened state so that they can go back to being a Thetan, which is apparently immortal but dies. And this is such a crap species, these Thetans, that over 8 billion of them currently have degraded down to humans. And more of them every year, because obviously there's more of us every year. So Thetans are crap.
We're not doing very
Yeah.
well on the enlightenment path, then, one would suggest.
No, I think they're all on the juice or something, man, and getting, and downgrade. Oh, I've downgraded to a human. I just wanted to bring it up mainly because it's mental. But I'm surely 100% accurate and believable because I don't want to get sued. I haven't got anything to take, so there's no point suing me. Everything's in the wife's name.
But if you do buy some Brief History of Mystery merch and some Sci Trek merch, maybe you'll get the money to pay off all these court costs like you'll incur after this particular stream. And that one particular line just got me was the good old we're all immortal, but we die.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're just
A little
really
bit of
bad
contradiction
immortals.
in terms of- What are they called? Fanchettas. That's a type of cheese. Isn't it?
Thetan. No, yeah,
That's the
that's
one.
Pancetta, it's
mock
type of
Scientologists.
ham, isn't it?
Yeah,
Pancetta,
It's
Isn't that
bacon. Bacon.
It's like
Bacon,
they're
yeah,
bacon
yeah.
lardles,
Sliced
isn't it?
bacon,
Or like
Immortal
Yeah.
ham. But what we're in agreement is that Mr. Hubbard was 100% accurate and a lovely guy. But he generally thought he was reincarnated. He actually wrote a book, Mission in Time, when he tried to prove that his past memories from his previous life was actually accurate. And guess how much he was able to prove?
Zero.
zero.
All. Absolutely nothing. I read a bit of that book. Nothing.
Yeah,
I
if
don't
it
understand
invented
how
the
people. I don't understand how Scientologists believe it. I mean, the guy was a novel slash a fiction. You know, he was a writer before he then came up with the religion. I mean, it's not an idiot because he came up with a religion and turned it into a billion dollar religion within what, I don't know, 100 years or whatever. It's massive, isn't it?
It's something like that, yeah.
But doesn't that just go to show you how quickly a religion can build into something when?
But you say this, Damo, but give it 100 years. Don't underestimate J.K. Rowling's. Everybody could be celebrating the religion of Quidditch in 100 years or something like that.
I'm more on board with that than I am bored with Scientology.
Yeah. So it's like Ricky Gervais says, isn't it? If you burn a library, you lose all the books. The same books for science will come back eventually because we'll discover it all again. We'll write it down. Religions wouldn't come back because they'd just be new ones that were made up. They wouldn't be exactly the same. All the information in the science books would eventually be the same.
Which is based on evidence.
Yeah.
Well, we mentioned that really quickly. So, yeah, that's my religion. So we mentioned that really quickly. Do you think it's interesting then that pretty much all of the religions in the world believe in reincarnation except Islam and Christianity? And I'm going to leave Islam well hell alone because again I don't want to get banned. But we can have a go at Christians because they'll forgive us.
Didn't they both, if you look back through their
Church of
history,
England.
but they originally believed in reincarnation, didn't they? I think both Islam and Christianity. If you study the history, it's more
Islamic did, yeah. Christians did. We believed in it, and because we were more pagan religions. Pagan religions believed in reincarnation. We battered it out of them as soon as Christianity took over, because we want to believe in one God.
Isn't Jesus kind of the reincarnation into his own body? He supposedly died on the cross and was resurrected 3 days later. Wouldn't that be the spirit leaving the body and coming back?
The earliest version in history, indeed, isn't he? Really, if you want to believe that one.
I think he's
it's on a temple in
exception that proves the rule.
I think it's
on a temple in Luxor that predates it.
You don't come back in physical form because you either ascend to heaven or you go into hell on the day of judgment. So there isn't a need for a physical form.
Yeah. Somebody else think that hell would be much nicer. Heaven looks cold.
Warmer, yeah.
Breezy. You don't get to do anything. All the kinky stuff's going on down below. So anyway, that's a whole different story. A whole different conversation.
There's a good Jim Jeffries sketch about that, isn't there? He'd be one of the devil's boys. He wouldn't punish you. If you've been a bastard your whole life, he'd reward you because you've been doing his bidding. So why would he punish you? That'd be your clubhouse, surely.
I'd be down there. Anyway. Where's the drink? Where's the women? So it's all the fun women are going to be down there as well. Anyway, way off topic.
Yeah.
But I do wonder whether the sort of Christianity as a religion is quite controlling. I think that's fair to say. It very much tells you what to do. Do this, do this, do this, and then you'll go to heaven or you'll go to hell. Ding, ding, going down. Whereas the Buddhist faith is more about it's lots of chances. You're trying to move towards karma and all this, but also you're trying to reach enlightenment and better yourself. But you've sort of got go after go after go. It's like there's very little consequence.
It's like entering a cheat code on a computer game, isn't it, for infinite lives?
Yeah. Infinite lives, yeah, exactly. But do you think that's maybe why Christianity dumped it though? Yeah, I'm just thinking, it's like Christianity sort of like, well, we're a control system more than a religion. So this reincarnation thing, we've got to scrap that. People just do what they want.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's a case of, look, you're getting one shot at this, guys. You're getting one shot at this. And, if you get it right, all very well and good, you go up there. If you get it wrong, then you burn in the fires of sulfur. You go downstairs with one caveat.
Yeah.
If you repent, you get another shot of going upstairs.
Last chance.
Last chance, kids. Last chance.
If somebody is really, really good their whole lives, but commits some sort of sin just before they die, say they, I can't think of any the seven sins. They're greedy or something just before they die.
Yeah.
Renounce their faith just before they die. But then die suddenly and don't get a chance to sort of like say sorry. They go to hell. But somebody can be bad their whole life, apologise just before they die, go ding ding straight up. Catholicism's crap.
If it's down to like verbalization of the mantra that you're carrying regarding your eternal soul, you know. So maybe he hasn't actually turned up at that little box with a dodgy curtain and said, "Hey, Father, I have it," you know, and all that type of stuff, and recanted his sins. But if inside, I mean, we're talking about a guy who doesn't exist, who's just suddenly died, by the way, everybody. But if in his brain, if in his brain he's going through that anguish and torture and thinking, "Oh, well, you know, I need to sort this out," then perhaps would he? So would halfway between the two be back here, and is that reincarnation?
Yeah. It's sort of like being held back at school. Try again. That's what I think. You go up to, St. Christopher.
Try again because you're
St.
rubbish.
Christopher at the gates. He opens his book, grade book, like peering over the book, like, try again.
Give it another go. Give it another go. Especially if you're Buddhist, you can have as many as you want. Just triangle, left, right button, left button. You get another life.
I mean, I think I do like Buddhism though.
Triangle, X, Y.
I'm glad you picked up. I'm glad you picked up on that, Jay. Where we're going with that. Good lad.
I do think Buddhism's got the right idea. I think it's about internalizing religion for yourself, and it's about spirituality more than it is perhaps about religion. It's being at one with nature. It's learning to tune out outside influences, meditate, free the mind. Like, people don't actually, I don't think, realize like how difficult it is to actually completely empty the mind of any thought. Most people can't meditate to that level, even if they claim to be able to meditate and do it regularly. They can't clear their mind of all thought.
My brain just goes, don't think about that. Don't think about it. Oh, boobs. Damn it, don't think about boobs.
Start following Millwall. Job done.
Yeah,
very
exactly.
easy.
You won't think of anything.
No thoughts whatsoever.
Football, punch.
And if you look at the sort of those Eastern religions where they, as well as others, Buddhism, isn't there, like Taoism as well? Some others that have that sort of like underlying sort of spiritual sort of to it, and haven't been adopted by the government and incorporated into a control mechanism like Christianity, all the Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Islam. Perhaps they haven't had that sort of government that's sort of taken the religion and imposed it like Christianity was by the Romans, for example, across Europe as a control mechanism. And I think that's probably why it's a little more pure. If you actually go back to, I think, some of the teachings of Jesus Christ, for example, back before like the latest version of the Bible, in some of like the ancient scriptures from not the four prophets that the four people that all the stories in the Bible came from. Was it Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John? And you look for others, I think, like Ezekiel being one of them. There's some very interesting accounts, isn't there, of what the teaching, and you find that some of the teachings supposedly that Jesus was akin to were more towards the spiritual and the Buddhist side and enlightenment and. It has been, I think, bastardized, which by the governments that have used them for control.
Well, or at least by the people in power, because it's the rulers, it's rulers, isn't it?
Ruling class.
It really, it's the ruling class. Yeah.
Well, I mean, like 600 AD, the Roman Catholic Church was sort of created, and it was Octavius. He sort of went. They cherry picked it. They went through the writings out at the time, and they went, "So we like that. We don't like that."
Yeah.
Mary Magdalene. No, we're not having that. And they completely rewrote the story. A lot of things, like him coming back after 3 days, doesn't appear for like 500 years until after his death. That story didn't appear for ages, and it's about 100 years after his death. The Christians sort of, I think they were sort of struggling to get the teachings out there, and they had to sort of like jazz it up a little bit. But there's lots of things that
I mentioned earlier. The entire story of Jesus Christ is written on a temple in Luxor in Egypt that predates it by 7,000 years.
I was looking at.
The crucifixion, the died on the cross for 3 days, and the resurrection 3 days afterwards. And I do think it's just an anthropomorphization of astrological observations, because the sun appears to die and stay stationary for 3 days around the winter solstice. Yeah, so the sun died. It's roughly in the constellation of the Southern Cross. So he died for 3 days and then was resurrected. It's just the sun coming to the lowest point in the sky, appearing to stop for 3 days and then going up again. And that's why it's a story that's repeated through various different cultures, because it's not a real story of an actual individual probably that ever existed.
No, exactly. And like they've said a couple of times in the side chat there, they're saying hell isn't in the Bible. It's not. It's sort of hinted at a couple of times, but it's a complete Catholic invention. They do sometimes talk about purgatory. That's sort of discussed in the Bible in a couple of places, but there's no hell. There's no Satan. It's an invention of the Catholic Church. That's the stick, isn't it? To sort of go, don't do that or else. Nothing.
But you have to have somewhere to punish people, otherwise they won't do what you're telling them. And you can't have reincarnation as something that normal people can achieve, otherwise again they won't listen and do what they're told. So you have to take those things out, in order for it to be a control mechanism. If you left those in, it wouldn't really work. And I suppose that shows perhaps within Buddhism, doesn't it, where it's not really a controlling religion in the same way that the others are.
No.
They don't tell you have to go to this place to worship, and they don't have. They don't ask for money as the other religions do. I don't believe.
I've had a well time. I've become a Buddhist today. I was brought up Catholic. I'm now Buddhist. I don't know, where do I sign up? Who do I send the check to if I want to become a Buddhist? You. Excellent. I surely send it to the Dalai Lama, surely, who is reincarnated, and that's official.
It's a weird kind of way. My surname is.
Well, I suppose we haven't covered
an anagram of that.
Okay. I'll cut you a check. Send that post. So I want to. Do I have to shave my head? My hair. I'm losing my hair anyway, so I don't think it really matters.
I'm just interested in the check.
Yeah, just I bet you are. Yeah, when there's somebody from the Czech Republic turns up at your door going, "Hello, I'm your Czech," you're going to be so confused.
Yeah,
you're like, "No, I wanted money."
Are we answering that one? Or are we ignoring it?
Which one?
The one that you put up and then we totally didn't answer.
Didn't Jesus talk about having no churches?
No.
Or are you three atheist agnostic or believe in religion?
Yeah, that's the one. Where are we going with that?
Go on, Dave. You go first because mine's complicated.
Yes.
Exactly. Damien?
A
I'm a universalist.
universalist. Okay.
I'm a universalist. I believe in a universal energy. I believe we begat of energy, we go back to energy. We're all comprised of energy, and energy is never truly destroyed. That's what I believe in. I'm not going any deeper into it unless you subscribe to my channel.
I do like that.
We talk about it for fucking hours.
I do like the way that you describe that universalist. I tend to have a similar belief to that. I'd say I'm generally, I suppose, an atheist. However, I suppose you could consider it slightly agnostic, because if there was a God, I don't think we'd possibly be able to sort of fathom that level of power. If there was like a being that created the universe, it'd be outside of our realms of comprehension anyway, because we probably can't travel out of this universe in any way, shape or form. So if that creator exists outside of the universe, there's no point in worrying about it.
I agree with that, because the level of comprehension of human beings, you just got to go to IKEA for a flat pack and we can screw that up. So understanding life, the universe and everything, it's not happening.
I think Buddhism's the closest to a sort of the spiritual religion, isn't it? And I think I believe in that more than I believe in any of the sort of organised religions telling you must think this.
There is no way I'm being out Buddhists today. You two have become Buddhist in the last 2 hours.
Mine's true. Literally like
you see it in real time, everybody. By the way, we have a group chat on Facebook, and this has been announced. These two truly are Buddhists now.
Yeah, 12:30 I became Buddhist. That's why I went, yeah, I like this. I think Buddhism is less a religion. I don't think it's a religion, though. I think it's like a way of life, or it's a way of thinking more than a religion, because they don't tell you really to do anything. There's no rules to live by. It's like this is a way of like trying to explain life, and it's wisdom, and it's being thoughtful. And even the Dalai Lama said, he was asked if I can prove that. Carl Sagan asked the Dalai Lama, if I prove reincarnation isn't true, what will Buddhists do? And he says, we'll absorb it. We'll change our thinking. We'll because that's how Buddhism is. We don't, we don't try and force our thinking on anybody. If you put it, but it might be quite hard to prove. So, but yeah,
that's pretty much anti every other world religion. Every other world religion has a specific view, doesn't it, of the world?
Yeah.
Buddhism just says, think what you want.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of
I am an atheist in brain, but I actually think there's a difference between my brain and my heart, right? So I believe in.
Oh, brilliant!
Yeah, I know. In my brain, I'm an atheist. I don't like anybody telling me what to think. I don't like people telling me things that I know to be true, like evolution, are fake and are not true. Because there's evidence to support it, and I love talking Jehovah's Witnesses for hours.
Oh yes.
We had this conversation last week. It was not just because there was a pretty one that I was trying to seduce. It was because I liked. Yeah, exactly.
The trick is to invite them inside, let them walk into and then slide the bolt on the front door slowly and go, "You're my wife now." That'll totally change the conversation. Yeah,
that would freak me out as well. But I do think though there's this thing that I think it's in a lot of us. I put religion in my feelings, in my heart, sort of thing, in the same way that I really would like Santa to be true. I would quite like it if there was a Jesus. I wish there was a Santa. I want there to be a Santa. There isn't. I wish there was a Jesus. There isn't. Or God. I should say God. I think there probably was a Jesus, but I wish there was a God. I don't think there is. So I'm atheist, but a little bit agnostic.
I think a lot of yeah, you can't stop laughing, can he? It's brilliant. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Yeah, we're very similar in our line there, I think. Yeah. I think a lot of people that are capable of sort of rationally looking at a lot of information available to them about religion come to that sort of atheist, agnostic position, really, because it just seems the most reasonable given our current scientific understanding of things.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Good answer, boys. Thank you, man. I was going to ask a question then. So, while we're talking about God a little bit before we move on, or before we come to an end, and we have to figure out what we all believe. If you believe in reincarnation, then does that sort of reinforce the idea of God? Does it tend to suggest that God or some sort of religious spirit, big G God sort of thing exists, or does it sort of deny the existence of God because of the way reincarnation works? There's no heaven, there's no hell. To take my point, does it sort of reinforce religion, or does it take something away from it?
Would you need a manager to manage reincarnation if it's an intrinsic property within the universe and it just occurs?
Oh, very good. Very good.
There you go. That's kind of where I'm going with that.
Very good.
Explained much better than I said it. Does it need an office manager?
That was quite concise for me, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's absolutely the best comment you've ever made on any of these mystery machines.
Well, that's a good point though, because is reincarnation just an effect of nature? Is it just something that's happening? But God tends to suggest it's something that was created. He's the creator at the end of the day, isn't he? So if this is just a natural effect, does it mean there isn't a God? Basically,
I think correlation isn't causation. Just because you can sort of attribute certain things to what happens doesn't mean it's the reason for it happening. So for me, no, absolutely not. I don't think just because acknowledging the fact that things can be a happy accident isn't necessarily going against creationism.
Excuse me.
Coincidences can still occur. So with religion being a faith thing, George Michael will tell you all about that. With religion being a faith thing,
you gotta have faith.
He's got that George Michael track of
This is
yeah.
mental. This is absolutely. You know what didn't help with him making that comment, and then that in the side chat there, the dyslexic devil.
Yeah, the dyslexic devil
who
worship.
sold his soul to Santa. So you made that comment, and then straight away I saw that, and that just destroyed me. So I'm gone, me. You're gonna have to carry it.
I didn't see that, but yes, I think that is a brilliant play.
I had him in it. So Jay saying that, and then that in the side chat has just ruined me. So see you next week. That's
Isn't
me.
it
I'm
interesting
gone.
that Santa's an anagram of Satan as well? Just putting that out there, and they're both like, well, Satan's red. Santa wears a red outfit, although he used to be green, didn't he, in the Nordic tradition, and then it was Coca-Cola that forced the change to red. But it's just interesting that it's an anagram of the word, really, as well.
You're just in Santa. I mean,
well, the interesting point is how old is it before children sort of grow up and realise that Santa's not real?
You know, children might be watching. It's
October. They've been at school a few years.
Let people find out in their own way. You're not the messenger of doom. It's not up to you to ruin people's childhoods.
My point is like many of the things about Santa is a guy that miraculously flies around the world on a sled of reindeer. There's some quite big statements in there that you realise can't be true when you have a bit of an understanding of science and the world. Well, surely, like God does fall into that same category as Santa and Satan, doesn't he? Like it's or the Tooth Fairy. It's just we don't. There's not a religion around the Tooth Fairy or a religion around Santa to sort of keep those claims going.
Catholicism, capitalism.
Yeah, I would have gone down that route as well. Yeah, consumerism and everything. Yeah,
consumerism and Santa is our God.
Consumerism maybe.
Yeah,
for Santa. Yeah, okay, yeah. The present giver. Okay, yeah, all right.
Yes, I got one in.
Yeah,
it made sense, kind of. Only the first time tonight.
Well, let's round it up then.
Okay.
And let's throw that out there. Reincarnation. A thing? I think there's a answers to it. Is it you can just go yes or no, or you can actually it might be a thing, but we might not understand it. What do you think? Reincarnation, Dave. You are my. Yeah,
I am indeed.
You are. So you're first on my.
Yes, first victim. You won't mind anybody who watches on a regular basis, which is going to be us three and not everybody else. But anybody who watches on a regular basis, I like to go last to try and be profound and really out there. So I'm screwed when I'm chose to go first. But I usually use other people's ideas to base mine off. Is it a thing?
Jesus and God of Santa for grown-ups.
I've just seen that. They're massively distracting you lot in the side chat. I've forgotten the question.
All the stuff we've been talking about tonight.
Oh yeah, all that, yeah.
All this crap we've been talking about tonight. What do you think? I love that, Paul. Quite a lot, mate. We've destroyed. We've annoyed all of the Scientologists, all of the Catholics. Well, yeah, okay, it was me. And I'll take that one on the chin. And who else have we annoyed tonight? I'm sure we've just Americans.
All of the world's major religions except Buddhism.
All of the major religions.
Everybody, really, yeah. Everybody.
Sorry. Go on then. Somebody's got to say something.
All right. Well, I think our life force is never truly destroyed. As I said before, in answer to I believe it was M's question. I could have been wrong though. But I did say that I was universalist, and I believe in the continuation of energy. Now, whether there is memory transference upon that, whether there is personality transference upon that, I'd like to think so. I obviously I can't. I have no empirical evidence of it, but I think it is a thing. I think there is too much to it for it to be a happy coincidence and made up fantasy, and especially on some of them, and I think the fact that it is forgotten about by the new vessel, if I can use that terminology, and the fact that it is forgotten about makes it more believable than if we retain them memories and had a head full of memories of lots of different lives, and we were totally befuddled walking. I mean, I'm befuddled anyway, but I mean, as a general population, so I start to think there is something in it. I'm just not sure what it is. Damien, you quickly, please get me out with this one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think there's just the fact that it's pretty much prevalent in all the sort of the world religions when you trace the roots back. The fact that regardless of how it's seen in the country that you're investigating cases from, that you get a similar percentage. Some of the cases, truly, the level of detail that is provided by these children is far too much for them to have learnt that information. I mean, there's a case, isn't there, where there was, I think, an Indian kid that was remembered his past life, remembered that he was murdered with an axe. He managed to find the grave, the location of where he was buried. They found a body with an axe wound to the skull. He remembered the name of the bloke that killed him. They found the bloke that killed him. He got into what's the word? Admit that he'd committed the offence to him. And I just don't think with some of these cases with that level of detail and the sort of those kind of coincidences occurring that it could be anything but him remembering his past life where there's that level of. How else do you explain it? There is no scientific explanation for it currently. Maybe we're missing that scientific explanation. As I said before, science improves as time continues. Maybe we'll get there and there'll be some kind of understanding. But for me, with 4.5 billion years of evolving stardust now having this conversation about whether reincarnation is possible, we probably don't understand everything about the universe yet.
No, I'd agree with that. I agree with you, David, talking about how energy never dies. I'm completely on board with that. I think that we don't know what we don't know, and there's so much in science that is more than possible. That it does come across like witchcraft. That is, particularly quantum mechanics and things. There's stuff in there that's just mental.
So it's quantum entanglement till they proved it.
Yeah. Oh, I've got a t-shirt somewhere. Can't see it. I should have put my quantum entanglement t-shirt on.
That would have been very apt.
I just think that if you're going to believe in reincarnation, you've got to believe in the soul. And I'm in two minds with that because I'm not sure I do. But at the same time, I think I'm more than the sum of my parts, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does to me.
I know how the brain works. I know how behavior works. I know how memories work. As much as I'd learned in my psychology degree 10 years ago anyway. But it's I just feel like there's more to it than just neurons firing across a brain of of matter and energy. And at the end of the day, we are energy. So go on, sorry.
There's isn't there that thing where there's when someone dies, if you weigh the body immediately before death and then afterwards, there's like a 28 gram, it's 28 grams lighter or something like that. The moment you've died from the moment you were alive, I believe there's something to that, and supposedly that's that. I'm not sure how true that is. It's more of a thing I've heard in sort of hearsay than any scientific evidence for it. But it's just interesting. That would give credence to some kind of soul leaving the body upon death, wouldn't it? And that energy perhaps returning, E equals mc squared. Energy is just matter, matter's energy. So if energy is released from the body, it's the same as losing mass. I don't know, just an interesting point on what you were on about.
Well, that's the same thing. I would agree with that. I would also agree, though, I think that the Buddhists have probably got it right, in that probably all living things have got a soul. In that case, I don't think we're anything particularly special because we're sentient, and we may be just more aware of it. But just because I maybe believe in a soul, I think it's one of those things that we call it a soul, but I don't think we understand it in the slightest of what that means or what it is. And I don't think that means that the reincarnation is a thing. I think that life is a one-hit wonder, and you should really not worry too much about the next life or the afterlife. You should worry about this life. And, I think thinking about that too much just wastes the time that we've got. And we haven't got that much. So, enjoy this life and make sure that you live it. And it's an amazing thing that we're on this planet. It's if you start looking at how many stars are around the galaxy and how unique our little world is. So appreciate what you've got rather than worrying about what might happen next or worrying about what might have happened in the previous life and things. And that's
I agree
how
with
I
that
think of it.
ethos. Yeah, I agree with that ethos, definitely.
Yeah,
Just think a
I
bit
agree
more.
with the ethics of that as well. Yeah,
Yeah, earn it.
there's a lot
we're
of things
looking
it
for
doesn't
you.
explain though.
No, don't explain anything.
It doesn't explain a lot of these case studies with phenomenal
It just
amounts of
completely
detail and
fall.
evidence.
Yeah, it's a nice mantra to have, but it completely falls down in so many respects, which is why we have these
Again, it doesn't
conversations.
explain this at all. Well, yeah, and I find the conversation fascinating. It's just not something I'm going to base any of my ideology on, if that makes sense. It doesn't change
absolutely,
the way I think about our life.
Yep.
You know, you always get that God works in mysterious ways whenever he does any bad things, which is, like sort of the religious person's excuse for God doing bad things, like giving cancer to children and that kind of thing. But I do always think that if reincarnation is possible, then it and death isn't the ultimate end for anyone, and that you can reincarnate in another body on another planet to have another life experience to get you close to enlightenment, then perhaps then you don't need that argument for the bad things that God does, because you have to experience both the bad and the good in perhaps different lives in order to move up that enlightenment, until you achieve it. I don't know, just a thought that I've had about.
I've changed my mind, by the way. It's genetic memory. It's all genetic memory. I forgot about genetic memory. It's that. I actually believe genetic memory might be a thing, because it's proved in the animal kingdom. You can do that thing where those earthworms go through a maze, then you grind them up, feed them to the next generation of earthworms, and they go through first time. Not earthworms, sunworm. That's sort of proof that genetic memory can happen. And I actually think aren't instincts just genetic memory in a way?
Yeah, they would certainly fit that kind of remit, wouldn't they?
Yeah, it does. I don't think it explains most of the cases we're talking about, though, because you can only have genetic memory from your parents, basically, or their parents, and their parents. So you'd have to be related.
You have to be related, don't you? You have to be related. You need to share DNA. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Mark, do I believe it in my head or my heart? Santa.
Well, it's a tough one to call that, Mark, because these are both now Buddhists.
Yeah. I will have to, and I saw Bazza talk about my mohawk again. I saw you, Baz. I saw the comment. I didn't put it up because I'm not having it. But I've still got hair. But I might get next week. I'm going to be in an orange shawl, selling you all flowers, and I'm going to have a shaved head. Got to be done. All right then, guys. Thank you very much. It's been an interesting evening as always, and we're going to call that an evening. We have gone under 2 hours, guys. We haven't done that for a while.
No.
No.
I might be in bed today. That'd be good. And like normal kind of thing. But honestly, thank you very much, guys. And I think we've sorted that reincarnation out. Did we actually have an answer in the end? I don't think we did we?
No.
I sort of went.
Well, no, there wasn't consensus across the panel, but there shouldn't be on a lot of topics when they're this sort of this sort of controversial. On the one hand, science can't really explain it, but on the other hand, science can't also explain the detail in the case study. So it just doesn't marry up, does it? There's something we're yet to understand, and it will probably come with further scientific understanding.
Scientologists have got it all right. They're geniuses. We're all stupid. Please don't sue me. Okay.
Well, I would say this: if you want to know what we all truly think, your future selves will tell you.
Yeah. My spirit animal told me that this is all complete. It's a bear. My spirit animal. My spirit animal is going to be like a gerbil. Or
it is as well. Crap. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's going to be like, or it'll be like a platypus or something. It'll be like what the fuck is that? My spirit animal's not going to be a stag.
Is it just me who's been like watching this stream and just waiting for a hand or a face or something out of the ring to come out of that loft? opening behind Damien there. Some kind of creature to crawl out of the ceiling.
That would be freaking awesome.
Well,
See, mate,
yeah,
we'd get views.
it would be awesome, like live on camera, because I'd see it in the camera first. By the time that's probably seen it, it's too late as well.
Genuinely, that's going to be my nightmares for this evening, and what a lovely way to end. So,
Your nightmares.
I keep thinking
Surely mine.
Somebody's going to come in through the door. No, it's my nightmare now. So I always expect someone to come in through my door, like like the burglar or something.
Yeah.
Right.
Good
night,
most
guys.
people
Thank you very
just
much.
want your stuff. They don't want to kill you.
Oh, by the way, I'm not here next week, so I'm in sunny Lanzarote. 28 degrees when I land in Lanzarote, if the weatherman's right.
Very nice. Very nice.
Quite jealous.
I can't wait. So I won't be with you next week, but I don't know what you guys are planning, but hopefully we'll still have a show. And I should be back with a lovely tan the following week, because I know you're only here really to see me. So
yeah.
Why'd you say it like that? What? Good night, guys. See you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
See you later,
next
guys.
week.
Thanks
Bye,
for being here. Thank you.